What happens when one of Hollywood's most respected actresses comes face to face with a talk show host who refuses to back down from controversy? What you're about to witness is the moment Joy Behar pushed things too far, creating an on-air confrontation that left producers scrambling and viewers at home completely stunned. This is the story of how a simple interview turned into television chaos and why Jodie Foster's response changed everything. Before we dive in, make sure to hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments what you think about what's coming. Trust me, you're going to want to share your thoughts on this one. The tension was already thick in the studio as Jodie Foster settled into the guest chair across from Joy Behar. The View's cameras were rolling, the audience was packed, and what was supposed to be a routine promotional interview was about to become anything but routine. Foster had come on the show to discuss her latest directorial project, a deeply personal film about family trauma and redemption, but Joy had other plans. So Joy began leaning forward with that signature smile that never quite reached her eyes. Your new movie deals with some heavy themes: family dysfunction, abuse, generational trauma. Makes me wonder if you're drawing from personal experience here. Foster shifted slightly, maintaining her composure, but clearly caught off guard by the directness of the question. Well, Joy, all artists draw from their experiences in some way. The story resonated with me because I think many families struggle with communication and understanding across generations. Right, but I'm talking about your own family specifically, Joy pressed, her tone becoming more aggressive. Your relationship with your mother was complicated, wasn't it? The whole thing with John Hinckley, the way your mother handled your career as a child, that had to leave some scars. The studio audience grew noticeably quieter. Even Whoopi Goldberg, sitting at the far end of the table, exchanged a concerned glance with Sarah Haynes. This wasn't the direction anyone had expected the interview to take. Foster's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Joy, I appreciate your interest, but I'm here to talk about the film and the important themes it explores. The characters in this story are fictional, and while all art comes from somewhere personal, I think it's more valuable to focus on what audiences can take away from it. Oh, come on, Joy interrupted, waving her hand dismissively. You can't hide behind the art when you're putting your own trauma on screen for everyone to see. I mean, your mother essentially pimped you out to Hollywood when you were just a kid. That's what child stars go through, right? And then when that obsessed fan tried to kill a president to impress you, where was she then? The words hung in the air like a slap. The camera operators continued rolling, but you could see the uncertainty in their movements. This was live television and things were spiraling fast. Foster's voice remained steady, but there was steel beneath it now. Joy, I think you're confusing interview with interrogation. My mother was a single parent doing her best to support 4 children. She protected me throughout my career and helped me make choices that allowed me to grow into the person I am today. Protected you? Joy let out a sharp laugh. Is that what we're calling it? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like she threw you to the wolves and counted the money, and now you're making movies about family trauma. The connection seems. The set was buzzing with the usual hum of activity. The crew moved with practiced precision, adjusting lights, prepping cameras, and running through final checks. The host, Sarah, stood in the background, talking to her producers. As they reviewed notes, an air of anticipation began to settle over the room. This wasn't just any episode, it was a special one. Jodie Foster, one of the most respected actresses in Hollywood, was coming on the show, and everyone knew it would be a big deal. There was something almost magnetic about Jodie. Her presence commanded attention, and her reputation for being fiercely private only added to the intrigue. But today she wasn't just there to talk about her latest film. This wasn't going to be the usual polite promotional conversation. From the moment the show's team received the script for her segment, they could sense it. Something was off. Something was different about this one. The tension started to build before the cameras even started rolling. Sarah wasn't the only one who had a feeling. The co-hosts felt it too. Whoopi, always the calming influence, had noticed the way Jodie had walked into the studio. She'd barely acknowledged anyone, her eyes scanning the room like she was trying to assess who was in charge. As the audience trickled in, taking their seats, the quiet hum of the studio began to swell. The producers gave final instructions through their earpieces, and the camera crew got ready to capture the live moment. Everything was set, but no one could have predicted what was about to happen. The cameras rolled, and Sarah welcomed Jodie onto the set. The usual pleasantries exchanged. But even then, there was an undercurrent. Jodie sat with an air of restraint, her body language closed off, as though she was already preparing for something. The co-hosts were on edge but maintained their smiles. And then Joy spoke up, her voice cutting through the small talk with a sharp question. Jodie, it's been said that your recent work has been more about confronting your past. Is that true? Are you using your films to address your own demons? The question, though framed as an innocent inquiry, hung in the air like a challenge. Jodie's eyes flickered for a moment, her calm facade slipping for just a second before she regained composure. She took a deep breath, pausing as she measured the tone of the room. I'm not here to talk about me. I'm here to talk about the work, she said, her voice controlled, yet carrying a weight that was hard to ignore. Joy, however, wasn't backing down. But isn't your personal life what makes your work so compelling? It's all connected, isn't it? Hollywood, fame, the struggle. It's part of the narrative. At this, Jodie's face hardened, her jaw tightening imperceptibly. The room fell silent, all eyes on the two women. Whoopi, sensing the shift in energy, leaned forward slightly, but it was clear this was not a conversation that could be easily diffused. You don't think I've earned the right to choose how I tell my story? Jodie's voice was calm, but the fire in her eyes burned through the studio lights. The co-hosts exchanged uneasy glances, unsure whether to intervene or let the moment play out. Joy, relentless as ever, leaned in. I think you've hidden behind that mysterious actress persona for long enough, Jodie. Maybe it's time we got a real conversation from you. The people deserve that. They deserve the truth, not just the polished version you've been selling for years. Jodie's expression flickered, but there was a cold determination in her eyes now. She stood up slowly, her microphone rustling as she moved. The sudden shift in posture startled the crew. The cameras zoomed in, capturing the tension, the slight tremor in Jodie's hand as she removed the mic. She wasn't just standing, she was confronting. Joy, Jodie's voice was measured, yet the words came out with chilling clarity. You don't get to tell me when I've shared enough. I've been in this industry long enough to know when someone is trying to push me into a box. You think you know my story better than I do? You think you're entitled to dig into my past just because you're sitting behind a desk? Joy blinked, her usual bravado faltering for just a moment. I'm not digging into your past. I'm asking the hard questions, the ones everyone else is too scared to ask. Jodie's lips curled into a thin smile, almost like a smirk, but it wasn't friendly. It was a smile of someone who had just seen through a facade. What you're doing isn't journalism, Joy. It's exploitation. The words hit harder than any of them could have expected. The rest of the room went dead silent. Joy's face flushed red as she took a sharp breath, attempting to regain control of the situation. Exploitation, she scoffed. I'm doing what the audience wants. They want honesty, not this act of perfection you've been putting on for years. Jodie's calmness contrasted sharply with Joy's mounting fury. The co-hosts remained silent, unsure of how to break the tension without making things worse. Whoopi, typically the voice of reason, was looking more and more uncomfortable. This is the problem, Joy, Jodie continued, her voice low but firm. You think that digging into someone's wounds is honesty? It's not. It's cruelty disguised as curiosity. The studio felt smaller in that moment, the tension palpable, as if the very air was charged with something unspoken, something more than just an argument. Joy's expression shifted again, now a mixture of anger and something else, a crack in her shield. You think you're the only one with struggles? She hissed. You think your past is the only one that matters? What about everyone else who's been forced to sell their pain just to stay relevant in this industry? Jodie's eyes softened for just a moment, a flicker of understanding crossing her face. I never said that, but I refuse to let you use my story as a prop in your game. I've earned my place here, and I've earned the right to protect my narrative. If you can't understand that, then maybe you're the one who needs to take a step back. Joy's face twisted, caught between frustration and something deeper, a realization that she was losing control. The moment hung in the air, pregnant with possibility. The cameras kept rolling, capturing every ounce of the conflict, every shift in expression, every flicker of emotion. No one moved, no one spoke. The silence was deafening. For the first time in years, Joy Behar was backed into a corner. The silence didn't break immediately. Instead, it stretched, heavy and uncomfortable, the kind that made even seasoned professionals shift in their seats. Somewhere off camera, a light hummed louder than it should have. A stagehand froze mid-step, unsure whether moving would somehow make things worse. Joy was the first to move. Not dramatically, no sweeping gestures, no raised voice yet. She leaned back in her chair, folding her arms as if physically bracing herself. To the audience at home, it might have looked like confidence. To those in the room, it looked like recalibration. "You're very good with words," Joy said at last, her tone controlled but sharp around the edges. "That's part of the brand, right? Calm, thoughtful, above the mess. It plays well." Jodie didn't sit back down. She remained standing, one hand resting lightly on the back of her chair, grounding herself. Years of press tours, hostile interviews, and rooms full of people waiting for her to crack had taught her one thing: posture mattered. "This isn't about branding," Jodie replied evenly. "It's about boundaries." The word landed differently than the others had. Boundaries weren't dramatic. They weren't entertaining. They were inconvenient, especially for live television. Whoopi glanced toward the control room, subtly raising her eyebrows. In her earpiece, the producer's voice was a low hiss of indecision. Cut to commercial? Let it ride? The numbers were climbing in real time. Viewers could sense when something unscripted was happening, and they stayed for it. Joy let out a short laugh, shaking her head. "Boundaries," she repeated. "You walk onto a public show, promote a movie built around pain and healing, and suddenly you want boundaries." Jodie met her gaze without flinching. "I want respect. There's a difference." The audience shifted. No applause, no murmurs, just attention. This wasn't the kind of tension people clapped for. It was the kind they leaned into. Joy straightened, uncrossing her arms. "You know what frustrates me?" she said, her voice rising just enough to signal a shift. "Guests come in here all the time wanting to control the narrative. They want the spotlight, but only at a flattering angle. And if someone pushes back, suddenly they're the villain." Jodie nodded slowly, as if considering the point. "And you know what frustrates me?" she said. "Being invited into a conversation that turns into an interrogation disguised as concern." A flicker of irritation crossed Joy's face. "That's television." "No," Jodie replied. "That's a choice." The control room went quiet. Even the director stopped calling shots. They were watching now, not producing. Joy leaned forward, elbows on the table. "You think I woke up today planning to target you?" she asked. "This is what I do. I ask questions people at home are thinking." Jodie's eyes softened, not with weakness, but with something closer to clarity. "Are they? Or are those the questions you're thinking?" That was the moment the balance tipped. Joy opened her mouth to respond, then closed it. The pause was brief, but it was real. Cameras caught it from 3 angles. Sarah glanced at Sunny, then back at Joy. No one jumped in. Instinct told them this was no longer a segment. It was a reckoning. Joy exhaled sharply. "You know what?" she said, standing now. "I'm tired of this double standard. Actors get to be complex. Hosts get labeled difficult. You walk away with awards. We get think pieces about our tone." Jodie didn't step back. If anything, she stepped closer, not confrontationally, but deliberately. "Then why turn that frustration on me?" The question wasn't loud. It didn't accuse. It invited. Joy scoffed. "Because you represent it. The system, the privilege." Jodie nodded once. "And you represent something powerful too. A platform people trust. Why waste that trust on resentment?" The word stung. It showed on Joy's face before she could mask it. "I've spent decades earning my seat at this table," Joy snapped. "Don't talk to me about waste." "I'm not," Jodie said. "I'm talking about choice." A murmur rippled through the audience. Quiet, instinctive. Not approval, recognition. Joy paced a step away from the table, running a hand through her hair. This wasn't how this was supposed to go. The questions were meant to provoke the guest, not expose the host. "You think this is easy?" Joy said, her voice tight. "Filling hours of television, keeping people watching, competing with noise, with algorithms, with outrage culture?" "I don't think it's easy," Jodie replied. "I think it's influential." That landed harder than any insult could have. Joy stopped pacing. "Influence doesn't pay the bills." "No," Jodie said quietly, "but it shapes people." Another silence. This one felt different, less hostile, more fragile. Whoopi finally leaned in slightly. "Maybe we all need to breathe for a second," she offered gently. Joy shot her a look, not angry, just exhausted. "Don't smooth this over," she said. "Not yet." She turned back to Jodie. "You come in here with your calm voice and your measured words, and you have no idea what it's like to sit in this chair every day." Jodie's response was immediate, but not defensive. "You're right, I don't. And you don't know what it's like to be reduced to a headline before you finish a sentence. We're different battles. That doesn't mean one of us has to lose." Joy's shoulders sagged slightly. It was subtle but visible. The producer's voice crackled in Whoopi's ear again. "We should really—" "Not yet," Whoopi whispered back. Joy returned to her chair, sitting heavily. "You think I'm cruel," she said, not accusing, asking. "I think you're tired," Jodie replied. "And I think tired people sometimes mistake sharpness for truth." Joy let out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. "Maybe," she muttered. The audience leaned forward as one. Joy looked up at Jodie again, eyes searching now instead of attacking. "And what if this is the only way people listen?" Jodie paused before answering. When she spoke, her voice carried no judgment. "Then maybe it's time to ask why silence scares us so much." The control room finally stirred. The director raised a hand, signaling readiness to cut. Joy glanced toward the camera, then back at Jodie. "You're not wrong," she said quietly, "and I hate that." Jodie offered a small, restrained nod. Not victory, understanding. The tension hadn't disappeared, but it had changed shape, and everyone in the room could feel it. The shift was subtle, but unmistakable. The confrontation that had once crackled with raw energy now settled into something heavier. Reflection, the kind that doesn't announce itself, but lingers. Joy broke eye contact first. She looked down at the table, tracing an invisible line near her notes. The papers were untouched. The questions she'd prepared suddenly felt irrelevant. "You know," she said slowly, still not looking up, "this show wasn't always like this." No one interrupted. "There was a time when conversations unfolded," Joy continued, "when silence wasn't treated like failure, when we didn't feel the need to escalate every moment just to keep people from changing the channel." Jodie listened carefully. This wasn't an interview anymore. This was a confession, whether Joy intended it to be or not. "What changed?" Jodie asked gently. Joy gave a short, humorless laugh. "Everything else did. The world got louder, angrier. People stopped listening unless someone was bleeding, emotionally or otherwise." The word hung in the air. "That pressure," Jodie said, "it doesn't come from nowhere." Joy finally looked up. "Exactly. Ratings, clips, headlines. Producers asking, 'Can you push harder?' Viewers saying, 'You went easy.' It adds up." Around them, the studio remained frozen. Even the audience seemed to sense they were witnessing something they weren't meant to. An off-camera truth unfolding on camera. "And somewhere along the way," Joy went on, "I stopped asking whether pushing harder meant pushing smarter." Jodie nodded once. "That happens to a lot of people in positions of visibility." Joy tilted her head. "You say that like you've been there." "I have," Jodie replied, "just in different rooms." A faint smile crossed Joy's face. Not amusement, recognition. "You know what scared me?" Joy said suddenly. "When you stood up." Jodie raised an eyebrow slightly, inviting her to continue. "Not because I thought you were angry," Joy explained, "but because you weren't. You were calm, and calm is dangerous when someone's unraveling." A few quiet chuckles rippled through the audience. Brief, nervous, human. "I didn't come here to dismantle you," Jodie said. "I came here to talk about work, about meaning, about why stories matter." Joy sighed. and I turned it into a fight. Yes, Jodie said, but you don't have to turn it into a pattern. Joy leaned back, staring at the ceiling lights. You make it sound so simple. It's not, Jodie said, but it is possible. The director raised his hand again, silently counting down. 30 seconds to commercial. 20. Joy noticed. She glanced toward the camera, then back at Jodie. If we cut now, she said, this gets edited into something ugly. Then don't cut yet, Jodie replied. 10 seconds. Joy made a decision. She turned fully toward the camera, posture straighter, voice steady but stripped of performance. Sometimes, she said, addressing the audience directly, we mistake intensity for insight, and sometimes we forget that the people sitting across from us are not characters. They're human beings. The studio was completely silent. Joy took a breath. Today, I crossed a line. The words landed without theatrics. No dramatic pause, no deflection. Jodie watched her carefully, saying nothing. I let my frustration speak louder than my purpose, Joy continued, and that's on me. 5 seconds. Joy turned back to Jodie. You didn't deserve that. Jodie responded with a small nod. Not absolution, acknowledgement. We're going to take a break, Joy said calmly.